Okay, on the show today, Michael Mason, so a man of many talents, coach, does stuff with fitness, stuff with diet, comes from strong background in martial arts, amongst other things. Looking forward to finding out more from him. I've been following his Instagram, and I thought to myself, what do I want to look like in 10 years? I thought to myself, what, because a lot of the sort of, people you see in fitness, they're 25, they're skinny, they've got no body hair, they're not proper men. And as someone who's 43 and wants to be in good shape at 53, I was like, well, who should I follow? And I think someone suggested you, Michael, and your channel's very popular, isn't it? You're doing well.
Yeah, I mean, it's grown in the last year. I don't really know, pinpoint it, what reason they're following for. But I think ultimately I think I'm the person who actually sort of does it,
right,
day in, day out, and they can see some consistency, and they can see some, I think, just some integrity, whether I train outside or it was in a gym, but they can see some integrity over what I do.
Well, for me, it looked real because I saw like this guy working out in his backyard in the UK, and clearly in shape, but also with a bit of depth to it. There was clearly some understanding there of a bit more than, let's all get abs or something. And I just felt real to me in a way that a lot of the sort of influencer types don't. And I thought, okay, this is more honest and more real, and something maybe I could, as a sort of middle-aged guy, relate to more than someone on a beach in Bali, 25 years old, who I'm never going to be. And that was what made me follow you.
And I think, and I think with that is that, especially on social media, a lot of the influences, it's all about battering yourself. And
right.
And my training is not about, I've done enough battering of myself, over the years with everything. And now it's that, again, like the buzzword, that longevity. But it's about not battering myself and not being not allowing myself just to sort of like want to get that endorphin hit, that dopamine hit for me to feel better. This is about me just being generally better, feeling good about myself, feeling strong that I can do everyday things without having an injury, trying to do something for the sake of some sort of crazy shit that you'll see people doing just to get sort of likes and hits and stuff like that.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I remember when I was doing martial arts at 18, I could just bounce off walls and be invincible. And then I remember getting my first little tweak when I was like 21 or something with a muscle, and going, oh, it healed in a week, of course. Now it would heal in 3 weeks or a month or something. And I overdid the gym last year. I got into weights, but I was training like I thought I was 25, and doing 2-hour sessions. And I ended up just really sore, really tired, little injuries. And someone said, look, Mark, you're training, you're like you're a 25-year-old on steroids. You're not. You're a guy with an office job. And, now I've got a much more sustainable fitness program that actually makes me feel good for the rest of my life, which is the point, right?
Yeah. And people ask me how not how often I train, excuse me, but how long I train for. And they expect me to say, oh, I'm doing 2 sessions a day. I'm working out. Most of my sessions of training is 20-30 minutes. I play around with stuff, but it's just 20-30 minutes. I mean, I haven't got time to spend 2 hours. I'm not trying to batter, like I said, I'm not trying to batter myself to win some award or something. I'm 59. I just want to do stuff that just makes me feel good. I can feel strong, and I can be doing it in 10 years time, in 20. I can carry on for the rest of my life, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's mature. That's how it looks to me. Mature, not in the sense of just years, but in the sense of attitude. And let's hear a bit about how you got there then, Michael, because you've had a pretty interesting life from the bit of research that I've done. How did you get interested in, I know, martial arts, the bodyguarding? How did you get interested in these things?
Well, martial arts for me was, and I can remember it as if it was yesterday. It was 1973. It was the era. It was when Enter the Dragon came out, and Kung Fu,
Bruce
which
Lee.
was with David Carradine, which was a series that was on. I mean, it was on Friday night, and I was hooked from that, because then that's all we had. We didn't have, internet. We didn't have Google. We didn't have any of this. We didn't have videos, and I was just completely hooked. So I enrolled in my parents enrolled me in a school, a karate club in Brighton, and this was in 1973. And interestingly enough, last week I was meeting a friend. We were going out to have some coffee, and I parked in a car park, and walking through the shopping centre, I saw the sensei, who Ron Silverthorne, who was a sensei then, and this is 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've looked, and I can remember it. I'll remember his face. If it was 100 years time, I will remember everything about. And he was sitting there, and I was looking at him, thinking like, that's Ron. So I said, excuse me. I said, you won't remember, but are you Ron Silverthorne? He said, yeah. So it was just, and he's 90. He's got a handshake like a vice-like grip. He was smiling. He's still teaching in Sussex, and it was just that whole.
Great.
Yeah, it was,
Great.
it was my birthday, and it was to me, it was like the best birthday present.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel very fondly about all my senseis over the years in Brighton. I've been doing Aikido with Tom Maria Helsby for years, and the people that have gone through their dojo over the years, who've gone on to achieve things that have, to really help their life, in very significant ways. And even when I stopped training Aikido, I'd still go, to the Christmas party and pop around their house once a year to say hi, kind of thing. Like there's that relationship, and martial artists often do have that sustainability, don't they? They're doing it well into their 70s or 80s in many cases.
And I think especially then, whether now it will have that longevity, because then it was so different.
Yeah.
Now it's not so. It's commonplace. It's like football. Mixed martial arts is like football. Is like boxing, less. But yeah. So perhaps it won't have that same long-term effect, because then in the 70s, I suppose we lived that dream, that mystical, and that was part of it, wasn't it? That was part of it.
I remember getting into Aikido, and kind of there was something like this Eastern esotericism, and I guess it wasn't so sports oriented, like MMA. I was just in a jiu-jitsu club, Brazilian jiu-jitsu club, and it was very much lined up for what's the competition that's coming next. Yeah. And that's kind of a young man's game to some extent, right? Of course, there's masters and things like that. And I worry that while I love the modern martial arts, I think they're very effective. I think they're great for fitness, the MMA and the things associated with that. I was doing Thai the other day. I worry that they've lost some of the personal growth aspect and some of the sustainability for people to be training, into their old age.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine line. I think with some, let's say, traditional martial arts, they've gone so far off the scale in a negative way, drawing people in with that mysticism, covering stuff up, because they don't actually have the ability to teach the deeper levels. Especially in Japan.
You lived there for a bit, right? You were in Japan for a bit, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to go there and train there, and I think it's, so people see that's gone too far, like one way, and obviously, let's say modern day martial arts has become so sport and competition orientated. It's gone, another way. But I think there's a place for elements with everything, especially with, let's say, the modern day stuff, because, I started martial arts, one, for the mysticism when I was a 9-year-old, but I also wanted to fight. I wanted to do all this stuff. And a lot of traditional stuff have lost that actual combat ability that real sort of self-defense. And
you don't
so
need it in Japan though, do you? Do you know what I mean? Like you don't need it in Japan. I remember going to Aikido Honbu Dojo in Japan, and it was absolutely beautiful. Practice, beautiful guys every morning, you know, doing their practice, sustainable. But I thought these guys are never going to be in a fight. They don't have like it's Japan's safe.
Yeah.
I mean, even Shinjuku in Tokyo, it's safe.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought they don't have that emphasis, and that can almost takes away the base somehow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you need that. You need that stress of of real life, of just basic things, of walking down the street and being and being aware of your surroundings, which now everywhere we've lost that, because everyone's on their phone. They have no
situational awareness.
They have no awareness of, and it's just simple stuff. I mean, that's self-defense. It's not you can learn the most, let's call it the most effective move technique there is. But if you're unaware and you get ambushed, you're fucked.
Yeah, sometimes someone asks me for like a war story about martial arts, and I say, there's this one time in Ethiopia, these three guys tried to jump me, and they said, "What did you do?" They expected me to say I did this like wrist lock or this throw, and I said, "Oh, I had a newspaper in my hand, and I saw the first one coming, and I just hit him over the head with the newspaper and told him to fuck off." And the other two run. And I was like, that was perfect self-defense, because no one got hurt. I didn't get hurt. And I was situationally aware enough to go, this is a bit weird, this situation. And the only thing I had in my hand was a newspaper. So that wasn't some ninja technique. It was just get out of it, mate.
Yeah, but the thing is with that, they used to call that the Millwall punch. And the Millwall punch was what the football hooligans used to walk into a game with a newspaper, and with the newspaper, if you roll it up tightly and you fold it, you've got something that you've got pretty much a kosh. You put that into someone's face, and that as a self-defense is a really, really good let's call it weapon to have. Same with magazines. But now people don't have newspapers.
I was thinking about getting a spike put in my iPhone, because I said to my wife the other day, I said, "What?" I said, "If we get jumped walking down the street, what's likely to be in my hand?" And she's like, "Well, your phone." And I said, "Okay, I should get a spike put on the end of there, because I've got that in my hand anyway." Maybe that's the paranoid martial artist speaking. But let's get back to your life, because it's interesting. How did you end up doing bodyguarding? Tell us about that.
So bodyguarding really sort of came from there's two things. One, my experience with martial arts, but also culturally, I'm Jewish, and within a Jewish community, we were always brought up to look after our own. So it came really from that. So I went over to Israel to train, to learn stuff, how to protect people, how to protect the communities, etc. And so it just came from from that. And again, it was, I suppose, this thing from a kid, from that 9-year-old kid watching martial arts programs and seeing the good guys beating up the bad guys, the good guys protecting people, the good guys putting their life on the line.
Yeah, that never again, isn't it? When your people have suffered and been put through hell. And I've been to Israel 20 times and got a lot of friends that do Krav, and you see that feeling of protectiveness, which I think is a very wholesome, natural, masculine urge to go, you know what, I'm going to look after my family, because there are bad people out there. Yeah.
And interesting enough, today is Holocaust Day, and talking about Krav Maga, I was one of the first. There was a group of us, and I was one of the first UK instructors for Krav Maga, and this was back in the early 90s, before it became sort of like mainstream. And even with that, you know, Krav Maga has changed. You know, it's evolved. It's a different sort of yes, a different thing than it used to be. So
different context.
Yeah.
And what's bodyguarding like? I've got no experience of that. Never done anything like that. What's it like? I imagine there's a lot of standing around being bored, or like, how is it?
Well, I think there's elements depending on what type of client you've got, what type of scenario. It can be sort of like anything. You know, if you're in someone's house and you're watching the security cameras, that for anyone is just boring work. But that's where I suppose ultimately that's where the skill comes into not allowing it to be boring. So you're aware, because the bad guys know that. The bad guys know that people have these dips in attention, in awareness, and they're experts for finding the weak link. So yeah, it can be sort of like boring. I was lucky in that a lot of my work was with, let's call it, interesting people, and I did a lot of my work when I was in Switzerland. So
Geneva or Zurich, or
well, I was a ski instructor as well.
Oh.
So one of the things that one of my other sort of talents, the ski instructor, and so I used to look after clients. I lived in a very exclusive resort, and you'd get lots of not necessarily high profile, but extremely high net worth.
Which one? Okay, I know. I used to work ski resorts myself in Switzerland, so I'm just
curious.
Yeah. Okay, so plenty of money, people skiing around.
So plenty of money. So I used to have clients who would come on holiday, and I would look after them. And so my role as a ski coach, bodyguard, was, people say, well, it's two sort of like different things, and it wasn't, because as a ski instructor, my job is to get you from the top of the mountain down to the bottom of the mountain or wherever safely. That's part of it. So as a bodyguard, that's my job, to get you from point A to point B in one piece. So I would get clients who would already have their security, but their security couldn't ski, and they just wanted, and so rather than going to someone who was a 18-year-old ski instructor, they wanted someone who knew what they were doing, with a bit of experience, and also knew which were the good restaurants to eat in, and what was on the menu, and that's your local experience. And with a bodyguard, having local experience, you may not be as technically adept as someone else bodyguard, but if you have that local experience, you're a better guy to be with, because you know what exit points,
local. Wherever I've been traveling abroad, the local guide's always absolutely key. I used to look after rich people's kids in Switzerland on ski slopes. Used to snowboard around with their kids, the sort of hyper rich British tourists. It was a fun job, actually, for a couple of weeks. Beautiful place as well, right? Like quite a place to live.
I think anywhere in the mountains with snow is just beautiful. It doesn't really matter, where it's, but obviously the Alps have just that magical, they just have that magical feeling.
You do stuff in Scotland now, right? Which is also beautiful, of course. We shouldn't neglect the homegrown British Isles for foreign shores. You're doing retreats in Scotland.
So I do carnivore retreats in the Highlands. It's in a former hunting lodge in Glen Canich, and it's a really remote glen. It's not a tourist glen. It's on a hunting estate. It's absolutely beautiful, as the Highlands are. I mean, I think people don't realise how beautiful Scotland is, because they have mountains, they have big hills, they have mountains. It's not very it's not populated. it's just beautiful. And for me, you know, there's lakes and lochs, and it's just beautiful. And you're getting back to, you know, just a natural way of, I'm not saying necessarily living, but just a natural viewpoint of, you know, looking at beautiful mountains, beautiful scenery, and the season. And it doesn't really matter I think when you're living somewhere like that, it doesn't really matter what the weather's doing. You know, if it's pissing down, it still has its beauty.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
If it's cold, if it's cloudy, because you get all the coloring, you get all the different shades of grey, at the reflections, and it's just so I run a carnivore retreat, and that incorporates pretty much everything that I do. So it's the essence of me.
Yes, it's you. Awesome. What a great thing to sell. Let's talk about carnivore then. We've never had anyone on this podcast talking about it. We're not really a health and fitness podcast.
Yeah.
You know, we're looking more at the psychological side of the body, but I think people are interested in it. And I personally am. Like, I notice I get very tired if I have carbohydrates during the day. So I try and avoid that. I'm living a lot of meat and vegetables rather than sort of starchy carbs. I think a lot of people are interested in it. Jordan Peterson, I think, made it kind of famous, and his daughter, Michaela. It seems to be something that's popular. A few years ago, everyone would say be a vegan, and then everyone noticed that vegans were pale and weak and whiny. And then the carnivore sort of become the latest thing. Just like from the very basic, tell us a little bit about it, if you wouldn't mind.
So just my sort of like history, let's call it my nutrition history, has just been an evolvement from when I was in my 20s, because I wanted to try different things. I wanted to say, well, how does that work? How do I, perform with that? Let's call it eating a clean. I've never really eaten shit for a long time. I've had eaten shitty stuff, but it's not, let's say, every day I've been eating crap for 2 years. So I tried different things. I tried, the juicing craze, protein and carbohydrate, not combining them. I became vegetarian because I wanted to try being a vegetarian. I was vegan for that was for 3 years. I was vegan for part of that because I wanted, and this was in the late 80s, where there was you couldn't Google anything. You had to go and buy. I had to go to libraries to sort of like find books on, what do you do with mung beans and all.
Brighton pubs didn't have a vegan option, even in Brighton at that stage. Yeah.
But they had a very good vegetarian shop called Infinity. If you,
it's great. Great shop.
In Infinity Foods, and they were still, they were selling it then. Things like veggie bacon and like vegan bacon. There's some things like, well, hold on. If you want to save the animals, why are you eating something that's still got bacon on it? It's like, anyway, so it's just been sort of like in evolvement of that. And I noticed differences when you're in your 20s. It's pretty much you can do anything.
Yeah,
you can do anything. And then as I got into my 30s, I noticed that things would change. Body was changing. And so it was like, well, how do I, so I just kept on. And the carnivore, let's call it low carb, because, Atkins was doing like low carb, high protein, early 70s. So I started playing around with that and starting to discard. I never liked vegetables. I never liked vegetables as a kid. I never believed in Popeye with the spinach. I never, and I remember like talking to Anthony Chaffee on another podcast. It's like, this was what we were brought up to look at someone, Popeye the sailor as kids, as like the hero. He ate spinach and he smoked a pipe. And it's like, well, it's you couldn't get away with that now. So it's just been an evolution. And once I started to get rid of that attachment to vegetables and thinking, oh, you've got to eat vegetables because they're healthy for you, etc.
Eat your broccoli, it's do you good.
And and then starting to dive, into that. And then, over time, it's just, get less and less and less and less, more protein. And especially as you get older, if we can hang on to the muscle that we have, and if we can build lean tissue as we get older, that's what we have to do as we get older. I mean, it's as simple as it will improve our longevity, it will improve our life. So I'm not let's call it like one of these fundamental carnivores, because I think it's very, very difficult for very, very few people that are going to just stick to meat and salt and water.
Right, you have sauce, don't you? At least I saw on your. It made me very hungry looking at your Instagram.
I like cooking. I like making things sort of like tasty. So I'll use spices. I'll cook with vegetables if I'm making a stock, or if I'm making a stew. Every now and then I'll have some fruit, especially in the summer. But I don't go overboard with that. And the result is that one, I feel really, really good. And you were talking before about, this isn't a health and fitness, is your podcast is more sort of like, let's say, psychologically. But what we eat,
it's the basis, it's the foundation, right? Don't ignore it.
Affects that. And I've just found that dealing with shit situations, emotional shit situations, that my mindset is just far, far better when I'm eating the way that I am now, as opposed to how I was reacting to things, let's say 10 years ago. Again, breath work, training, all of those things come,
it's part of it.
A part of it. It's the holistic approach. But yeah, I mean, I eat a high protein diet, very, very few carbs, hardly any vegetables, and I feel great. And I try and make things tasty.
You look great, and I have to say, like I looked at you and went, "Oh yeah, it looks like a healthy bloke." More than that, this might embarrass you slightly, but a female member of my staff said, "Oh, good, you're getting that guy on. He's tasty looking," was what she said. A very young, beautiful woman. So yes, my female staff are admiring this, admiring you from afar, you should know, on Instagram. So I was like, okay, well, it'd be nice if someone's saying that about me in my 50s. So something's definitely going right. But as you say, it's how you feel, not just how you look as well, right?
But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who look fantastic, but they're screwed up. We don't have to look, we don't have to look very far, because people are thinking that body composition is what's going to make them feel good, and it will have an effect.
Yeah,
but there's other stuff that you've got to deal with and accept. And
let's talk about carnivore a little bit more then. So a couple of things. I'm thinking about it right now. First of all, I was going to do a reduction diet. I've got a few little niggly health problems I've had for ages, and I thought, oh, okay, do reduction diet. Someone said start on brown rice and add things. Someone else said start on steak and add things. And I thought that sounds much fucking better. I think that's the plan I'm going to follow. But then I thought to myself, I can't just eat steak forever. Like, I love meat, but the idea of doing what Jordan Peterson does of just having steak, I thought, no way. I mean, like, I guess this sort of still doing like some vegetables. I was having a curry 2 nights ago with my wife, and I thought to myself, okay, this is soaked in oil, which is probably terrible for my testosterone levels. And the rice is certainly very Moorish. The idea of never having a curry again certainly doesn't appeal to me. And I can see potentially huge benefits in this, and certainly more sustainable for me to have a healthy meat diet than I think it was when I was trying to be vegan and ended up just miserable and weak and snapping one day on the streets of Moscow and just going, screw this, and going for a steak. I distinctly remember the moment where I just went, I've had enough, on a dark winter's day in Moscow. So yeah, speak to some of the concerns people might have. Like someone said, hey, you're going to get constipated. Someone else might say, hey, I'm going to miss chips or rice with my curry. Someone else might say, hey, is that ethical? Like, what are some of the objections people have to it?
So just with, just with that, whenever we start anything, whatever it is, the biggest barrier is the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it, immediately. Oh, but how can I eat steak for the rest of my life? One has to break it down.
Day at a time.
You have to bring, doesn't matter about tomorrow, next week, 3 months time. You start today, you eat steak today, you take it. And for me, it's like this, probably one of the most important things, one day at a time. I know it's like a cliche,
yeah, it works.
But it really is. Oh, how am I never going to have curry again? I love curry. I've got a mate. We've known each other over 30 years. We've trained for over 30 years in martial arts together, and we used to every month or so, especially when I was living abroad and coming back, go to a restaurant in Seaford. It's an Indian restaurant, and have an Indian. And I love Indian food. I love English Indian food.
Traditional British Indian, nothing
British,
better.
Nothing and Peshwari naan, papadums, onion bhajis, chicken tikka masala, tarka dal, the whole lot, and I feel great. Always, the day after, I feel shit. The day after, I'll still be sort of feeling sort of like cranky and what have you. Now we don't sort of like you do that, because it's like, well, one, I don't like feeling like shit. However, if there was an occasion where I'm just going to think, okay, I'll have it, I'm prepared to take the consequences of feeling, I will have it, and and eat everything. And again, I mention this because I've got a very, very good friend of mine. He's a 2-star Michelin chef, has one of the best restaurants in the country. We're good pals. He invites me up. We do weekends. We do like boys' weekends and what have you. He does all the cook. Well, he knows what I do.
Yeah.
He said for my birthday, he said, he sent me down a whole load. He sent me down a whole load of steaks. Got this big box, and it's just a box full of ribeye that he gets from he's got one of the best butchers in the country. It was like fantastic. But I'm not going to I'm going to do that as a treat. I'm going to eat the bread because he makes fantastic sourdough. I'll eat everything. I'll take the consequence if I feel a bit rough, but I'm not going to be up my arse and just say, oh no, it's like this is, this is about living and just having what's the word? I can't think of the word. So back to the point is that if you want to make a change, one is thinking about doing carnivore, then try it one day at a time. Don't think about, oh, but I fancy Chinese. Will I not ever have that again? What will happen is that once you get used to eating that way, you'll eat something and you think, oh, this doesn't feel good.
Notice a difference. Yeah.
The same with, let's get back to Indian. People are so used to things like farting, having the shits and what have you. So they think that's normal, or having a burning arse, that's normal way to be. And everyone laughs about it, thinking, But really, is that a normal sort of?
Do you get constipated with all the meat?
No, I don't at all.
You don't.
Meat is a very low residue food, so you may not poo as much. I mean, if you're eating loads of vegetables and everything, there's loads of fiber, which is not digested, and then it gets stuck in the colon. That's more likely to cause you constipation, but the body has to go through a change. The gut microbiome has to change. If it's a car, if the car is used on petrol and you change it, it has to, you have to make some changes. So the gut will start to change to create bacteria to break down the meat, etc. So there will be a period where some people will get constipated for a few days. Some people it'd be a few days longer. but you have to persevere. You have to go through that. Like anything, you go if you start training, you go to a gym that you haven't been to a gym for a few months or a few years, you're going to ache for a few days, and that's what stops people, because they, oh fuck it, I went to the gym yesterday, I don't feel good because I can't move, I can't sit down and have a shit and everything, I'm not going back again.
But that's if I have 2 weeks off, I have 2 weeks off the gym, it starts to hurt again. But if I go every 2 or 3 days, it's a pleasure. I mean, exactly. How long do you try it for then? If I was to give this a go, I'm a big believer in actually experimenting and see if something works for me. You know, do the experiment. I think. Like, what would you recommend people do as a starter, or do you gradually go into it, or just go straight and have like 2 weeks? Or
well, I think there's 2 ways. If you gradually go into it, but you're still sticking to, I can get back onto the brown rice thing in a minute. But if you're still sticking to, let's say, crappy food, which is going to give you that sort of feel sort of good factor, the stuff that you can end up like overeating. I mean, if you can control that, okay, then you start eating less of that, incorporating more meat. But I think the best way is that you just go fully into it, and you do it for at least 30 days, and then you just start. You have to start playing around with it. I think everyone wants they want, what's the diet? Give me the list of what to do. They want you to give like the answer, and the answer comes from you. The answer comes from you, from your own experience of like, oh, I had too much bacon, or I had too much fat, and maybe need to turn that down. I feel better with red meat, or that chicken I had didn't satisfy me as much as.
Why do some people go just beef, and other people say lamb is very good? I knew one person that just ate lamb for a month and got sick of it and never ate lamb again. Some people say chicken's not great. I mean, like, do you think is it different makeups, different amount of sort of factory breeding and stuff?
Well, there is differences. So, lamb and beef are ruminant animals, so they can eat pretty much anything, grass, and they're already generally sort of like eating grass, and all of that. So it's a much healthier diet, and they can process it. Chicken, and unless you get fully pastured, aged chicken, the chickens in this country are that you get are young. They haven't had time to develop, but they're fed generally on corn and soy. They're not left to, and especially they're not left to sort of like scratch around.
Even your free range chickens or your organic chickens.
Yeah. So organic chicken may mean that the feed they've been given is organic soy. And the satiety effect that I love chicken. I like having chicken thighs, getting them all crispy. But if I was to have, let's say 500 grams of a good piece of steak, for me to get the same sort of feeling of, let's call it nourishment or even satiety, I need to eat 3 times the amount of chicken.
Right.
And there was a Parvel is a kettlebell coach, like famous guy.
Oh yeah.
And he was going on about, like it was like, remember years ago, like, oh, I'll eat chicken, but chicken's a weak animal because it can't even fly.
Chicken is a weak animal. I do not eat weak animal. Yes, yeah. I understand.
And again, I've got a group, and I've got a private group, and we were having a chat on Zoom on Sunday. And I was just saying, well, if I had to go to, if the zombies were coming in, and you can only have, let's say, you can only eat this or that, you can have whatever you want, but for me, it's going to be beef. It's going to be red meat, because that's where I feel like the strongest.
Anything else? Venison, boar. I mean, like,
venison again would be a good choice if it was wild. Lamb would be a good choice, but good beef, it just makes me feel sort of really. Again with pork again is fed. because it's not, because people want the fat, so it's fed. That it's not a wild boar. A lot of the times it's generally sort of like quite lean, and we need to have the fat.
Because otherwise that's what you're burning instead of carbs, right? Yeah, like times when I've had no carbs at all, a couple of times I was cutting for a fight, I felt really weak, I guess because my system was used to the carbs, but it's also I was pretty low fat at that point as well. I'd kind of much lower than now. So I mean, your system's essentially burning that fat as its main energy source, right?
Well, there's that, but also fat contains all the fat soluble vitamins.
Yeah, A, D, E.
So you're getting all the nutrients, especially vitamin D. If we don't have vitamin D, we can't produce testosterone. If we don't have cholesterol, we can't produce.
Right, that's what it's made out of. That's what it's made out of. It's made out of fat.
So all this stuff, and obviously I'm not going to get it because people say, well, Mike, you're not a doctor, you're not a PhD, so you shouldn't be talking about stuff. But there's plenty of people.
Anything.
But the thing is with that is that our brain is 70-80% cholesterol. Our cell walls are cholesterol. If we don't have cholesterol, we die. And yet the biggest drug in the world, statins, is going to reduce people's cholesterol.
Yeah, I just talked about this on another podcast in relation to your mother, and I also figured out a while back that doctors, particularly GPs, they're doing the best job they can, stressed than the NHS usually in this country, but they don't know much about exercise and diet and sleep and testosterone levels. They don't know much at all about that stuff, and sometimes the advice they give is amateurish beyond belief. Actually, like if they Googled it a little bit, they'd give better advice.
But the thing is, they don't have the time.
Yeah, no disrespect to doctors.
They don't have the time. They're given very, very little nutrition training, and what they're given is from the standard book.
And those books are biased, right? Like you look at the stuff that's going on in the US at the moment, like this farming industry, pharmaceutical industry, sugar industry. It's just massively controlling the advice the government's given it. And that's not a conspiracy theory. Like it's like clearly these are the funders of the studies and the government bodies. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's and because ultimately they want to sell you a pill. They want to sell you some sort of drug rather than some type of dietary exercise, or let's call it mindset intervention, to help you. So a couple of days ago, I saw it was a clip that was from on 60 Minutes. And it was a doctor who just been voted onto the US Dietary Guidelines Committee, or one of the committees. It's a government body. Dr. Fatima Cody, if I remember right, and she was saying that if you're obese, it's genetic.
Yeah,
and
nothing you can do about it.
And nothing you can do about it. So even with optimal, these are her words, even with optimal diet, optimal exercise, sleep and stress management, you're still going to be obese. She is funded, because there was another link that she's funded by a pharmaceutical company, and then it goes on to, they just want to sell you a pill. So whatever you're doing, but then it goes on to prove that she doesn't believe her own government's dietary advice, because to her, she's thinking that's the optimal diet. They don't believe that works. So, and then you get people saying, but Mike, you just eat meat all day, blah, blah, blah. It can't be healthy. Well, look at me, for fuck's sake. So it's like,
yeah.
So yeah, it's screwed. It's screwed up.
Well, I'm glad there's people out there sort of, putting the record straight. And sometimes, there's a lot of pushback against gurus like Helen Lewis's series. She doesn't like people giving advice on the internet. And I'm like, well, sometimes that advice is better than governments are giving. And we do need to be discerning. We do need to check the science and kick the can a bit. But yeah, I'm glad there's people, giving advice like you. I recommend highly people follow your fitness stuff on Instagram. Do you want to give your Instagram and any websites just so people know where to find you?
So I'm simply on Instagram as Mason Survival. And that's it.
Great. And Michael Mason, people will find it as well. And your Scottish retreat, I found from a Google search. So there's another Michael Mason who's at some university, but I found that Scottish retreat you mentioned.
Not me.
Yeah, there's another one. LSE or something. But it was
Yeah.
like second or third on the list for Michael Mason, or Michael Mason fitness. I think it comes up as well. Great. Just the last few minutes then. Is there anything we haven't touched upon that would be good for you to just mention?
I don't think so. I mean, nothing I can think of, unless you want to ask me anything specifically. Nothing. Yeah.
No, it's been good. It's been good. So, testosterone, is that something you look at? I mean, I know it relates to the diet side of things. Like as men get older, that seems to be an issue for many.
Well, you know, again, it's one of the things that people sort of like ask me, or they make a comment, generally like a negative comment. Oh shit, you can't be doing this at 59. Why don't you become honest and tell everyone that you're on steroids or testosterone? And you know, the fact is that I'm not. Testosterone, I don't know enough about, about it. And there was Dave Asprey a few weeks ago was mentioning that if you're over 40 and you're male, that you need to take testosterone, otherwise you're fucked. And I sort of like rebutted again, butted and said, well, hold on a minute, no, you don't. Are you telling me, people, that you've got to, you've got to have that, you've got to have something, you've got to go and buy a product when you can just improve your testosterone markers by a good diet, a good training stimulus, good sleep, stress management, etc.
Those four things will take care of a lot of what people think of as aging. Is that they've got shit diet, shit sleep, stressed out of their mind, sedentary jobs, don't lift weights, and then they call it aging. And I see someone like you who I can just feel has decent testosterone. Like as a guy, I can just feel that. Like if I walk down the street in Brighton, I feel the opposite normally. I walk by guys and I just go, it's a different feeling as a man. And the research shows that testosterone levels like a half what they were even 20 years ago, and that's half what it was 50 years before. So our testosterone levels on average are a quarter what they were pre-World War II. That's mental, like a quarter. So I kind of wonder how that's impacting society. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on the sort of bigger picture here of, more vegetarian, less testosterone kind of guys walking around the world. I mean, this is one of the reasons I left Brighton, if I'm honest, is I just didn't like being in that soup. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that whole scenario, what it could end up becoming is quite scary. And how one manages it in terms of like having your opinion. Obviously, you've got the guys who are sort of like ultra masculine, let's say like Andrew Tate, etc., and that attracts people, also puts a whole load of people off. And I don't know any more about him than that. But this whole thing where I suppose I'm too old to get my head around this gender stuff and non-binary, and I identify with this, and I to me it's, I just don't. I understand that people do have let's call them issues, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but if you have a population that's weak and doesn't say anything, and everything's okay, it's okay to be unwell, it's okay to be ill because you can just go to a doctor and get a pill. It's okay to be fat because we shouldn't be fat shaming. I don't fat shame anyone. But to me, if you're obese, then you're sick. Then you're not well.
Well, it's not okay to be weak because you're a liability to loved ones.
Yeah, and you can't look after anyone. You can't look after anyone. You can't look after yourself.
And as I say, a weak, sick population is a compliant one.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, gender stuff aside, that's pretty complicated. There's a few factors in there, but I think certainly we can agree on, you know, weak, ill, this is not a good thing. There has to be a middle ground between, you know, shaming people that have had tough lives or tough genetics or tough social situations, you know, the Gabor Mate stuff. And then that's, you know, that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end is saying, yeah, it's totally okay that testosterone levels are a quarter of what they were, that everybody's obese, that everyone's sick. Like, this is not okay. This is not good that people are mentally ill. Like, just walk through the streets of Brighton, the levels of mental illness are just tangible. The levels of addiction are tangible, and all the stats back that up.
Well, I went to London. I go to London, you know, every now and then, and went to meet other carnivores. We had some dinner up there, you know, and just going on the underground and you looking at, and I've always been a people watcher.
Yeah,
I suppose that's what made me a good bodyguard. Is I like watching people and watching them, you know, on the train, and I'm just like looking around. You know, everyone is fucked.
Yeah, they look terrible in London.
Everyone looks just
the women
fucked.
look 10 years older than they should look. The guys look weak. It's like no one looks well, man.
Yeah,
there's nowhere to live.
Vaping and you know, it's like fucking hell.
If it was making people happy, I'd say fill your boots, but it's clearly not making people happy with the addiction and depression and anxiety, you know. It's clearly not. Listen, we need to wrap up. It's nice to be a bit politically incorrect with you, Michael. I appreciate it. And as I said, I do recommend everyone check him out if you're listening to this on the podcast, particularly all you middle-aged ladies who follow this podcast. You really should go and objectify Michael on his Instagram, like my staff have been doing. Never mind. Okay, Michael, a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Mark, thank you very much. Pleasure.